Why would a woman throw away everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, for a dog bleeding out in the rain? The answer to that question would change more than just one life. It would shake the foundation of an institution that had forgotten what honor really meant. Norfolk, Virginia. The kind of place where the smell of diesel fuel and salt water becomes the scent of home, where the gray hulls of destroyers line the harbor like sleeping giants, and every morning begins with the distant sound of colors being raised on a dozen flagpoles. This was a Navy town, built on discipline, hierarchy, and the unspoken understanding that the mission always comes first. Always. Staff Sergeant Maya Reyes understood that better than most. 26 years old, with dark eyes that held the weight of too many decisions made too young, and hands that were calloused from a childhood spent working her way out of East Low's Angels. She wore her hair pulled back so tight it gave her headaches, because regulations didn't care about comfort. She had learned that early. Her apartment was a small efficiency near the base, the kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbor's alarm clock, and the heat only worked when it felt like it. But it was hers. Earned, not given. Today was different than other days. Today was the day that would determine whether the last 3 years of her life had meant anything at all. The final evaluation for the Navy's elite K-9 Handler Specialist program. Pass, and she would be assigned to a SEAL team, working alongside operators who moved through the world like ghosts, protecting assets that most people would never know existed. Fail, and she would be reassigned. Probably to some administrative role pushing papers in a windowless office, watching her dreams dissolve like salt in water. She stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror staring at her reflection. The uniform was pressed, the creases sharp enough to cut. Her boots gleamed. Everything about her appearance screamed discipline, control, readiness. But inside, her stomach was a knot of anxiety that no amount of deep breathing could untangle. She had one shot. One chance to prove that a girl from the projects, who had grown up with more ants than she could count, and a mother who cleaned houses for a living, belonged in a world built for men who spoke in acronyms and measured worth in deployments. The evaluation started at 0800. She grabbed her patrol cap and stepped out into the wind that smelled like a storm brewing over the Atlantic. Miles away, out in the churning gray waters where the ocean met the sky in an indistinguishable line of slate, Master Chief Petty Officer Cole Mercer stood on the deck of a rigid-hull, inflatable boat, his body moving with the swells like he had been born to it. 34 years old, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who didn't believe in softness. His eyes, pale blue and unsettling, scanned the horizon with the practiced vigilance of a man who had seen too much to ever fully relax. He was running a training evolution, teaching a group of baby seals how to navigate in conditions that would make most sailors turn green. But his mind wasn't fully there. A part of him, the part that never really left the battlefield, was back at the small bungalow he rented near the amphibious base. He had left Titan there. Titan, his retired military working dog, a 90-pound German shepherd with a coat like shadow and amber, and eyes that had seen more combat than most soldiers would in a lifetime. Titan had been there in Ramadi when the IED went off, had been there in Kandahar when the compound was overrun, had been there always, a silent guardian who never asked for medals or recognition, only the chance to work, to serve, to protect. But Titan had one weakness: thunder. The sound of it triggered something deep in the dog's mind, some primal memory of explosions and chaos. Mercer had left him with a neighbor, a good kid named Danny who needed the money. He trusted the kid, but trust didn't stop the small flicker of unease that sparked in his chest when he glanced at the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. He pushed the thought away, focused on the mission. That was the SEAL way. Compartmentalize, prioritize, execute, but nature doesn't care about your training. It doesn't respect your plans. Back on shore, the first crack of thunder sounded like artillery fire, shaking the windows of Mercer's bungalow. Inside, Titan paced, his claws clicking against the hardwood floor in a frantic rhythm. His ears were pinned back, his body tense. When the second boom rattled the walls, the neighbor, startled, opened the back door to check if something had fallen in the yard. In that split second, Titan bolted, a blur of black and tan fur, driven by fear older than logic, racing into the storm. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he had to run. Maya was walking because her car, a rusted sedan held together by duct tape and prayers, had finally given up 2 days ago. The mechanic wanted $400 she didn't have. So she walked, the rain starting to come down in sheets that soaked through her uniform within minutes. She didn't care. Her mind was locked on the evaluation. She recited commands in her head, visualized the obstacle course, the tactical scenarios, the split-second decisions that would determine her future. She had memorized every manual, practiced every drill until her muscles moved on instinct. She checked her watch. 07:15, 45 minutes. She would make it, wet cold, but she would make it. The head of the program, Commander Victoria Cross, had made it very clear during orientation. You are here because we need the best, not the almost best, not the tried-hard best, the actual best. I don't care about your sob stories, your excuses, or your personal struggles. I care about results. You show up on time, you perform flawlessly, or you are gone. No exceptions. She had said it while looking directly at Maya, as if already anticipating failure. Maya turned onto Hampton Boulevard, a 4-lane stretch of road that fed traffic toward the naval base. The rain was coming down hard now, turning the world into a watercolor blur of gray and red brake lights. Traffic was heavy, everyone rushing to get indoors before the storm hit full force. That was when she saw him. A large dog, dark and disoriented, burst from between two parked cars on the opposite side of the street. A German shepherd moving with a panicked, uncoordinated gait, his ears flattened against his skull. Maya stopped walking. Her breath caught. No, don't. The dog stepped into the lane. A delivery truck, blindingly white against the gray morning, was barreling down the road. The driver wasn't slowing, probably didn't even see the animal through the deluge. The sound was sickening, a dull, heavy thud that seemed to echo in Maya's chest, followed by the screech of brakes that came too late. The truck didn't stop. It accelerated, disappearing into the rain like a ghost. The dog was thrown toward the curb, landing in a crumpled heap of wet fur and stillness. Maya stood frozen on the sidewalk. The world seemed to collapse down to 2 points. The base, where the evaluation was waiting, where her future, her career, everything she had worked for was hanging in the balance, and the dog, bleeding out in the gutter across the street. She checked her watch. 07:42. If she ran, she could still make it. If she crossed the street, if she stopped, she would miss the evaluation. It was simple math, simple logistics. The mission always comes first. That was what they taught. That was what separated professionals from amateurs. You don't get distracted. You don't deviate. You execute the plan. But then the dog lifted its head. It was a small movement, weak and trembling, a struggle against gravity and pain. But it was there. The dog let out a sound that wasn't a bark or a growl, but a low, confused whimper that cut through the noise of the traffic and the rain. It was the sound of something that had served, that had given everything, asking why it had been abandoned. Maya raised cursed under her breath, a soft, broken sound that was equal parts resignation and heartbreak. She didn't run toward the base. She ran into traffic, waving her arms to stop a sedan that was coming too fast. Brakes squealed, a horn blared, someone screamed at her through a rolled-up window. She ignored it all, sprinting across the wet asphalt to the injured animal. When she reached him, she saw the damage immediately. This wasn't a stray. The dog was massive, well-fed, clearly cared for. He had a thick leather collar with a tag she didn't take time to read. Blood was pooling dark and thick around his abdomen, mixing with the rainwater. His breathing was shallow, rapid. Shock. He was going into shock. Maya dropped to her knees in the mud, her pristine uniform instantly ruined. "Hey, buddy, hey, I got you." Her hands moved with the efficiency of her training, pressing against the wound on his side, feeling the hot pulse of life trying to escape. The dog's eyes, brown and filled with pain, locked onto hers. He didn't try to bite. He didn't growl. He just looked at her with a level of trust that was terrifying. 07:58. 2 minutes until the doors locked. 2 minutes until her career ended. Maya didn't look at her watch. She was looking at the color of the dog's gums, which were turning pale. "I need help," she screamed at the passing cars. "Please, someone." A taxi slowed, the driver peering through the fogged window. "I'll pay you whatever you want," Maya shouted. "Just get us to the vet clinic on Shore Drive. Now." The driver hesitated, saw the blood, saw the desperation in her eyes. He nodded. Maya lifted the dog, all 90 pounds of him, cradling him against her chest. He was heavy, dead weight in her arms, but she didn't let go. She stumbled to the cab, climbed in, holding the dog across her lap. Blood soaked into her uniform, warm and sticky. The driver didn't complain. He just drove. "Faster," Maya whispered. "Please." The clinic was small, tucked into a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a dollar store. She burst through the door, the bell chiming cheerfully, absurdly out of place. A young veterinarian, Dr. Patel, looked up from his desk, his eyes widening at the sight of the soaked, bloodied woman carrying a dying dog. "I need help," Maya said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Now." Dr. Patel didn't ask questions. He moved fast, clearing a steel exam table, grabbing supplies. "Put him here." "What happened?" "Hit by a truck. Abdominal trauma. Possible internal bleeding. He's in shock." Maya rattled off the assessment with clinical precision, the training kicking in even as her heart hammered in her chest. Patel looked at her, surprised. "You military?" "Navy K-9 program." Was past tense. She didn't say that part out loud. Together they worked. Patel stabilized the dog, started an IV, began assessing the damage. Maya assisted, her hands steady, her mind focused. This she knew how to do. This made sense. The dog's heartbeat was weak but there. His breathing was labored but consistent. He was a fighter. It took 2 hours. 2 hours of surgery, of stitching torn tissue, of monitoring vitals that kept threatening to flatline. When it was over, the dog was alive. Sedated, wrapped in bandages, but alive. Patel looked exhausted, his scrubs stained with blood. "He's lucky you found him. Another 10 minutes and he would have bled out." Maya nodded. She felt numb, empty. She looked at the clock on the wall, 09:35. The evaluation was long over, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw the messages. 3 from her roommate asking where she was. 1 from the program coordinator, a single sentence that felt like a death sentence. "You missed the evaluation. Report to Commander Cross's office at 1400. She sat down in a plastic chair, her wet uniform clinging to her skin, and stared at the dog sleeping on the table. She had thrown it all away. 3 years of training, of sacrifice, of proving herself. Gone. For a dog she didn't even know. But when she looked at him, at the slow rise and fall of his chest, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. She reached out, gently touching the soft fur between his ears. "You better be worth it, buddy," she whispered. What she didn't know was that the dog's tag, the one she hadn't had time to read, bore a single word engraved in steel: Titan. And beneath it, a phone number that belonged to a man who would move heaven and earth to get his partner back. She thought the hardest part was over. She thought saving the dog was the end of the story. But sometimes, doing the right thing is just the beginning of the fight. Commander Victoria Cross's office was exactly what you would expect from a woman who ran her program like a military dictatorship wrapped in regulation manuals. The walls were bare except for framed certificates and a single photograph of Cross shaking hands with an admiral whose name Maya didn't recognize. The desk was immaculate, nothing out of place, every pen aligned, every paper stacked with geometric precision. Cross herself sat behind it like a judge at a tribunal, her uniform pressed to perfection, her expression carved from ice. Maya stood at attention in front of the desk, her hands behind her back, her eyes fixed on a point on the wall behind Cross's head. She was still wearing the same uniform from that morning, now stiff with dried blood and mud. She hadn't had time to change, hadn't been given time. Cross didn't speak immediately. She let the silence stretch, a tactic designed to unnerve, to make the person standing before her squirm. But Maya had grown up in a neighborhood where silence was a survival skill, where you learned not to flinch, not to show weakness. So she stood there, waiting, her face blank. Finally, Cross spoke. Her voice was clipped, precise, devoid of warmth. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, do you know why you are here?" "Yes, ma'am." "Enlighten me." "I missed the final evaluation this morning, ma'am." Cross leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. "You didn't just miss it, Reyes. You failed to show up. No call, no notification. You simply vanished." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "Do you have any idea how that looks, how that reflects on this program?" Maya kept her eyes forward. "I understand, ma'am." "Do you?" Cross's voice sharpened. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided that your personal priorities were more important than the trust we placed in you. It looks like you lack the discipline, the commitment, and the professionalism required to serve in this capacity." Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She knew where this was going. She had known from the moment she lifted Titan into that taxi. Cross opened a folder on her desk, flipped through a few pages. "Your record up until this point has been exemplary. Top marks in training, high praise from your instructors. You were on track to graduate at the top of your class." She looked up, her expression cold. "And you threw it all away. For what exactly?" "A dog, ma'am." "A dog?" Cross repeated the words like they were a foreign concept. "Not your dog, not a military asset assigned to you, a random stray you found in the street." "He wasn't a stray, ma'am. He had a collar. Someone cared about him." "And that someone wasn't you." Cross closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Reyes, this program is not about feelings. It's not about making impulsive decisions based on emotion. It's about following orders, adhering to standards, and understanding that the mission is bigger than any individual. You failed that test." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. She had expected this, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "Ma'am, with respect." "You don't get to speak." Cross's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You forfeited that right when you decided to abandon your responsibilities. I don't care about your reasons. I don't care about your justifications. What I care about is that this program maintains its reputation, and I will not have it undermined by someone who can't follow basic protocols." She pulled a sheet of paper from the folder, slid it across the desk. "This is your discharge from the K-9 Handler Specialist Program, effective immediately. You will be reassigned within 72 hours. Dismissed." Maya stared at the paper, her future, her dreams, reduced to a single sheet of administrative text. She felt the words forming in her throat, the arguments, the explanations. She wanted to tell Cross about the dog's eyes, about the trust she saw there, about the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. But she knew it wouldn't matter. Cross had already made her decision. She had probably made it before Maya even walked into the room. Maya picked up the paper, her hand steady. She saluted, sharp and precise, even though Cross didn't deserve it. Then she turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts. She had lost. She had done the right thing, and she had lost. That was the reality. That was the cost. She looked down at the discharge paper, at the words that ended everything she had worked for, and felt the sting of tears she refused to let fall. But in a small veterinary clinic across town, something else was happening. Dr. Patel had called the number on Titan's tag, had left a message. And in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, on a boat cutting through rough seas, Master Chief Petty Officer Cole Mercer felt his phone buzz in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw the voicemail notification, and listened to the message that would change everything. The voice was calm, professional. "This is Dr. Patel from Shore Drive Animal Clinic. We have your dog, Titan. He was hit by a vehicle this morning but is stable. A Navy service member brought him in and saved his life. You can reach me at. Mercer didn't hear the rest. His mind was already moving, calculating, prioritizing. He shouted orders to his team, handed off command, and within 20 minutes was on a helicopter back to shore. Titan was alive. Someone had saved him. And Mercer, a man who understood the weight of debts that could never be repaid, was going to find out who. By the time he reached the clinic, it was late afternoon. The rain had stopped, leaving the city smelling like wet asphalt and ozone. He walked through the door, still in his combat utilities, salt water still drying on his skin. Patel looked up, recognition flashing in his eyes. Master Chief Mercer. Where is he? Patel led him to the back room. Titan was lying on a padded mat, his side wrapped in bandages, an IV still in his leg. When he saw Mercer, his tail thumped weakly against the floor. Mercer dropped to his knees beside the dog, his hand resting gently on Titan's head. Hey, buddy. Hey, I'm here. Titan whined softly, his eyes never leaving Mercer's face. The SEAL felt something tight in his chest loosen just a little. He looked up at Patel. Tell me what happened. Patel recounted the story. The hit and run. The woman in uniform who had carried Titan in, soaked in blood and rain. How she had worked alongside him for 2 hours, never hesitating, never flinching. How she had checked on Titan one last time before leaving, her face unreadable, and then walked out into the afternoon without giving her name. Did she say anything? Mercer asked. Anything at all? Just that she was Navy, K-9 program. Patel paused. She looked defeated, like she had lost something she couldn't get back. Mercer stood, his jaw set. I need her name, her unit, anything you have. Patel shook his head. She didn't leave anything. I tried to thank her to get her information, but she just said the dog would be fine and left. Mercer pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in short, clipped sentences. When he hung up, his expression was grim but determined. I'll find her, he said quietly. And when I do, I'm going to make sure she doesn't regret what she did. Maya didn't go back to her apartment right away. She couldn't face the emptiness, the silence, the reality of what she had lost. Instead, she walked. Through the streets of Norfolk, past the naval shipyards where the destroyers sat like sleeping titans, past the dive bars where off-duty sailors drank away their shore leave, past the pawn shops and tattoo parlors that lined the roads near the base. She ended up at a small diner, the kind of place that served breakfast all day and had booths with cracked vinyl seats. She ordered coffee and sat in the corner, staring out the window at the darkening sky. The discharge paper was folded in her pocket, a physical weight that seemed to pull her down with every breath. A waitress approached, an older woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Deb. She refilled Maya's coffee without asking. Rough day, honey. Maya managed a weak smile. You could say that. Deb glanced at Maya's uniform, at the dried blood still visible on the fabric. You hurt? No, not me. Deb nodded, understanding without needing the details. You want some pie on the house? I'm not hungry. Didn't ask if you were hungry, asked if you wanted pie. Deb walked away before Maya could argue, returning a moment later with a slice of apple pie that was still warm. She set it down with a fork. Sometimes the world kicks you in the teeth, and sometimes a little sugar helps you remember that tomorrow's another day. Maya looked at the pie, at the steam rising from the crust, and felt something crack inside her. She picked up the fork, took a bite. It was good. Simple, sweet, honest. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, letting the warmth settle in her stomach. When she finished, Deb came back, took the empty plate. Feel better? A little. Good. Now go home, get some sleep, and figure out your next move. Whatever happened today, it doesn't define you. What you do next does. Deb patted her shoulder and walked away, leaving Maya sitting in the booth with her coffee and her thoughts. She didn't know that across town, in a veterinary clinic, a SEAL was making phone calls, pulling strings, calling in favors. She didn't know that the storm she thought was over was actually just beginning. And she didn't know that sometimes when you do the right thing, the universe finds a way to pay you back. But she would learn soon. What happens when the person you saved turns out to be connected to someone who doesn't forget debts? What happens when your worst day becomes the beginning of something you never saw coming? Maya woke up the next morning to the sound of someone pounding on her apartment door. Loud, insistent, the kind of knocking that made it clear the person on the other side wasn't going away. She groaned, rolling out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes because she had been too exhausted to change. The clock on her nightstand read 0630. Too early for landlords, too late for drunk neighbors. She opened the door, ready to tell whoever it was to come back at a decent hour, and froze. Standing in the hallway was a man in a khaki navy uniform, his bearing ramrod straight, his expression unreadable. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that filled a room before he even spoke. His eyes, pale blue and intense, locked onto hers. "Staff Sergeant Maya Rays." "Who's asking?" The man didn't smile. "Master Chief Petty Officer Cole Mercer, can I come in?" Maya's mind raced. She didn't know this man, didn't recognize the name, but the rank alone told her he was someone important, someone who didn't show up at random apartments at 6:30 in the morning without a reason. "Do I have a choice?" "Always." She stepped back, gesturing for him to enter. He walked in, his movements controlled, economical, like a man who had spent his entire life learning to navigate hostile environments. He glanced around the small apartment, taking in the sparse furniture, the single photograph on the wall of Maya and her mother, the stack of textbooks on the floor. His gaze lingered on the blood-stained uniform draped over a chair. "You saved my dog," Mercer said without preamble. Maya blinked. "You're what?" "Titan, German Shepherd, hit by a truck yesterday morning." Mercer's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, something raw beneath the surface. "You carried him to a vet clinic, stayed with him through surgery, and then left without giving your name." Maya felt her stomach drop. "He's your dog." "He was my partner, 4 deployments, saved my life more times than I can count." Mercer paused, his jaw tightening. "I owe you a debt I can't repay." "You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone would do." "No," Mercer's voice was firm. "Most people would have kept walking. Most people would have prioritized their own needs over a stranger's dog. You didn't. And because of that, you lost your spot in the K-9 program." Maya stiffened. "How do you know about that?" "I made some calls, found out who you were, what you gave up." Mercer took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Commander Cross expelled you for missing the evaluation, said you lacked discipline and commitment." "She's not wrong." "She's absolutely wrong," Mercer's voice sharpened. "What you did took more discipline and more courage than anything Cross has done in her entire career. You made a choice under pressure. You prioritized life over bureaucracy. That's not a weakness. That's strength." Maya shook her head, feeling the weight of the last 24 hours pressing down on her. "It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. The decision's been made. I'm out." "Not if I have anything to say about it." "You don't." Mercer smiled, a cold, predatory expression. "You'd be surprised what a master chief with the right connections can do." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw an email notification from the K-9 program coordinator. Her heart sank. Probably more administrative paperwork, another reminder of what she had lost. She opened it, her eyes scanning the text. Then she read it again. "What is it?" Mercer asked, watching her face. Maya looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. They're convening a review board to reevaluate my discharge." "When?" "Tomorrow, 1400 hours." Mercer nodded, satisfied. "Good, then we have work to do." "We." You think I'm going to let you walk into that hearing alone? After what you did for Titan, Mercer crossed his arms. I'm testifying, and I'm bringing witnesses. Witnesses? What witnesses? You'll see. He turned toward the door, paused. Get some sleep, Rays. Tomorrow we go to war. The next afternoon, Maya stood outside the administrative building, her heart pounding in her chest. She was wearing a fresh uniform, every crease perfect, every button polished. She had spent the morning practicing what she would say, how she would defend herself. But none of it felt like enough. Mercer met her at the entrance. He wasn't alone. Behind him were three other men, all in uniform, all with the hard-eyed look of operators who had seen combat. They nodded at Maya, a silent acknowledgement of solidarity. Who are they? Maya asked quietly. My team, Mercer said. SEALs. They know what it means to have a partner you die for, and they know what it means when someone saves that partner. They walked into the building together, their boots echoing in the sterile hallway. The review board was being held in a small conference room. Commander Cross was already there, seated at the head of the table, flanked by two other officers Maya didn't recognize. The room felt like a courtroom, cold and impersonal. Cross looked up as they entered, her expression hardening when she saw Mercer. Master Chief, this is a closed hearing. Not anymore, Mercer said evenly. I'm here as a witness. These men are here to provide testimony. Unless you're planning to deny a decorated SEAL the right to speak on behalf of the person who saved his partner's life. Cross's jaw tightened, but she gestured to the chairs. Sit. The hearing began with Cross laying out the charges. Failure to report for mandatory evaluation. Abandonment of duty. Conduct unbecoming of a service member. She spoke with the same cold precision she had used in her office, her words designed to paint Maya as reckless, unreliable, unfit for service. When she finished, the senior officer on the board, a captain named Holloway, looked at Maya. Staff Sergeant Rays, do you have anything to say in your defense? Maya stood, her hands clasped behind her back. She had rehearsed this, had planned every word. But standing there, under the weight of Cross's glare and the expectation in the room, all the practiced speeches evaporated. Instead, she spoke from the heart. I made a choice, she said quietly. I knew what it would cost. I knew I would miss the evaluation, that I would lose my spot in the program. But when I saw that dog bleeding out in the street, I couldn't walk away. Not because I'm reckless. Not because I don't understand the importance of discipline. But because I believe that what we do when no one is watching, when there's no reward, no recognition, is what defines us. She paused, her voice steadying. Commander Cross is right. The mission is important. Following orders is important. But if we become so focused on the mission that we forget why we're fighting in the first place, then what's the point? I joined the Navy to serve, to protect. And that's what I did. I protected a life. I don't regret it. The room was silent. Holloway nodded slowly. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. He looked at Mercer. Master Chief, you wanted to speak. Mercer stood, his presence filling the room. Titan is not just a dog. He's a retired military working dog. He served 4 combat deployments, detected over 30 IEDs, and saved the lives of more than a dozen operators. He's a veteran, and Staff Sergeant Rays treated him with the respect and care he deserved. He turned, looking directly at Cross. You want to talk about discipline, about commitment. Rays showed more of both in 2 hours than most people show in a lifetime. She didn't hesitate, she didn't calculate, she acted. And because of that, a war hero is alive today. One of the SEALs stood, a younger man with a scar running down his jaw. Permission to speak, sir. Holloway nodded. Titan saved my life in Kandahar, the SEAL said, his voice rough. Alerted to an ambush that would have killed our entire squad. I owe that dog everything. And I owe Staff Sergeant Rays for making sure he got to come home. Another SEAL stood, then another, each one sharing a story about Titan, about the missions he had been part of, the lives he had saved. The room filled with voices, with testimony, with the undeniable truth that what Maya had saved wasn't just a dog. It was a legacy. When the last seal finished, Holloway looked at Cross. "Commander, do you have any rebuttal?" Cross's face was pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "The rules are clear. The evaluation was mandatory. There are no exceptions." "Rules exist to serve us," Holloway said quietly, "not the other way around." He looked at the other officers on the board. They nodded. Holloway turned back to Maya. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, this board finds that your actions, while unconventional, were in line with the highest standards of service and character. Your discharge is rescinded. You will be reinstated to the K-9 Handler program, effective immediately." Maya felt her knees weaken. She didn't trust herself to speak. Holloway continued. "Furthermore, Commander Cross, your handling of this matter has been found to be overly rigid. You are hereby relieved of your position as head of the K-9 program, pending a full review of your leadership practices." Cross stood, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She didn't say a word. She simply gathered her papers and walked out of the room, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Holloway stood, extending his hand to Maya. "Welcome back, Staff Sergeant." Maya shook his hand, her voice finally finding purchase. "Thank you, sir." As the room emptied, Mercer approached her. "You did good, Reyes." "I didn't do anything. You and your team." "We just told the truth." Mercer's expression softened just a fraction. "Titan wants to meet you, properly this time. You up for it?" Maya smiled, the first real smile in days. "Yeah, I'd like that." Sometimes dignity doesn't just win. It transforms everything in its path. Have you ever met someone who changed the trajectory of your life without even trying? Someone who saw you, really saw you, and decided you were worth fighting for? The veterinary clinic looked different in the afternoon light. Softer somehow. Less clinical. Maya walked in with Mercer, her hands shoved in her pockets, her heart doing something complicated in her chest that she didn't quite understand. Nerves, maybe. Or anticipation. Or the strange realization that she was about to come face to face with the animal who had cost her everything and given her even more. Dr. Patel looked up from his computer, a smile breaking across his face when he saw them. "Master Chief, and you must be the mysterious hero who wouldn't leave her name." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not a hero, I just did what needed to be done." "Which is exactly what heroes say," Patel replied, standing. "He's in the back, been asking for you actually." "Dogs don't ask for people." "This one does." Patel led them through a door into a recovery area. There were 3 kennels, 2 of them empty. In the third, lying on a thick padded bed, was Titan. He looked better than he had 2 days ago. The bandages were smaller, cleaner. His eyes were alert, tracking their movement. When he saw Mercer, his tail started to wag, a slow, deliberate motion that said, "You're here. You came back." But when his gaze shifted to Maya, something else happened. He went completely still, not tense, not afraid, just watching, like he was trying to figure out who she was, why she smelled familiar, why his body remembered her hands even if his mind didn't fully understand. Patel opened the kennel door. "Go ahead, he won't bite." Maya knelt down slowly, keeping her movements calm, non-threatening. She had been trained to read dogs, to understand their body language, their energy. Titan's ears were forward, his posture relaxed. He was curious, not defensive. She extended her hand, let him sniff. "Hey, buddy, remember me." Titan's nose worked, inhaling her scent. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward and pressed his head against her palm. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight, trust, recognition, gratitude. Maya felt her throat tighten. She ran her fingers through his fur, over the scars on his side that were hidden beneath the bandages. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" Titan's tail wagged harder. He let out a soft whine, not of pain but of something else. Connection, maybe. The same thing Maya was feeling. Mercer crouched beside her, his hand joining hers on Titan's head. "He knows," Mercer said quietly. "Dogs always know who saved them." They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them in a small recovery kennel, the world outside fading into background noise. Eventually, Patel cleared his throat. "He's ready to go home. I'll get his discharge paperwork and medications." Mercer stood, helping Maya to her feet. "You should come with us." "What?" "To my place for dinner. It's the least I can do." Maya hesitated. This felt like crossing a line, moving from professional courtesy to something more personal. But when she looked at Titan, at the way he was watching her with those deep brown eyes, she couldn't bring herself to say no. "Okay," she said softly, "dinner." Mercer's bungalow was small but meticulously maintained. The kind of place where everything had its spot, where nothing was out of order. Military discipline extended to every corner of his life, apparently. But there were small touches of personality. A surfboard leaning against the wall. A framed photograph of a younger Mercer in full combat gear, surrounded by his team. And in the corner, a dog bed that looked well used, with Titan's name embroidered on the side. Titan immediately claimed his spot on the bed, settling down with a contented sigh. Maya sat on the couch, watching as Mercer moved around the small kitchen with practiced efficiency. "You cook?" she asked. "When I'm home, yeah. Can't survive on MREs forever." He pulled out ingredients, started chopping vegetables with the precision of someone who had spent years handling knives. "You eat meat?" "I eat anything that's not expired." Mercer glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Low standards." "Realistic standards." They fell into an easy rhythm. Mercer cooked, Maya set the table, and Titan watched them both from his bed, his tail occasionally thumping against the floor. It felt domestic, comfortable, like they had done this before. When the food was ready, they sat down across from each other. Mercer had made stir-fry, simple but good, the kind of meal that was designed for function more than flavor but somehow managed both. Maya ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware that this was probably the best meal she'd had in months. "Can I ask you something?" Mercer said after a few minutes. "Depends on the question." "Why the K-9 program? Why not go officer route or special warfare?" Maya set down her fork, considering the question. No one had ever asked her that before. Most people just assumed she wanted to work with dogs because it was easier than the alternatives. Safer. Less demanding. "My abuela had a dog when I was growing up," she said finally. "A mutt she found in an alley. Ugliest thing you ever saw, but loyal, protective. When my dad left, when my mom was working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, that dog was the one constant in my life. He died when I was 13, and I remember thinking, I want to do that. I want to be someone's constant, someone's protector." Mercer listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. "So I joined the Navy," Maya continued. "Figured I'd work my way into the K-9 program, get assigned to a team, and do something that mattered. But it's harder than I thought. The standards, the expectations, the fact that every mistake gets magnified because I'm a woman in a male-dominated field." She paused. "Commander Cross made it very clear that I didn't belong, that I was a diversity hire, a box to check, not a real operator." "Cross is wrong." "Is she?" "Absolutely." Mercer leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on Maya. "I've worked with handlers from every branch, every background. The good ones don't succeed because of their gender or their physical strength. They succeed because they understand the dog, because they're patient, observant, and willing to put the mission above their ego. You have all of that." Maya felt something shift in her chest, validation maybe, or the realization that someone finally saw her for who she actually was. "Thank you," she said quietly. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Afterward, Mercer made coffee, strong and black, the kind that tasted like it could power a small vehicle. They moved to the living room, Maya on the couch, Mercer in a worn armchair, Titan sprawled between them. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "With the program?" "You go back, finish your training, get assigned to a team." "And Cross?" "Cross is done. The review board is looking into other cases where she might have been overly harsh. Turns out you're not the only one she's pushed out for arbitrary reasons." Mercer sipped his coffee. "Change is coming, slowly, but it's coming." Maya nodded, letting the weight of that settle. She was going back. She had her future again. But it felt different now, like the path forward had shifted in ways she couldn't quite articulate. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Fair's fair. Why did you fight so hard for me? You don't know me. I'm just some random person who happened to be in the right place at the right time." Mercer was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "In Ramadi, my team got pinned down by enemy fire. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and I thought we were done. Then Titan alerted to a secondary position we hadn't seen, gave us the split second we needed to reposition and survive." He looked at her, his eyes clear. "That dog has saved me more times than I can count, and you saved him. So as far as I'm concerned, you're not some random person, you're family." Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them away, not trusting her voice. Mercer stood, walked over to a drawer and pulled out something small. He handed it to Maya. It was a military challenge coin, with the seal trident on one side and a dog's paw print on the other. "This is from Titan's unit," Mercer said. "It's given to people who go above and beyond, people who embody what we stand for. I want you to have it." Maya held the coin, feeling the weight of it in her palm. "I can't take this." "You already have." She looked up at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, and realized that arguing would be pointless. "Thank you," she whispered. Mercer nodded, then sat back down. They talked for hours after that. About deployments, about the places Mercer had been, the things he had seen. About Maya's childhood, her struggles, her dreams. And somewhere in those hours, the professional distance between them dissolved, replaced by something deeper. Mutual respect. Understanding. The beginning of a friendship that would outlast the challenges ahead. When Maya finally left, walking out into the cool Norfolk night, she felt lighter than she had in days. She looked back at the bungalow, at the warm light spilling from the windows, and smiled. Sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones you expect. Sometimes they're the ones you saved first. What does redemption look like when you've already lost everything? What does it feel like to walk back into a place that threw you out, knowing that every eye will be on you, judging, waiting for you to fail again? Maya stood outside the K-9 training facility, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The building looked the same as it had a week ago. Same gray concrete, same chain-link fences, same obstacle courses sprawling across the grounds. But everything felt different now. She was different. The discharge had been rescinded. The review board had cleared her. On paper, she was exactly where she had been before the incident. But paper didn't account for the whispers, the sideways glances, the knowledge that everyone inside that building knew her story, knew what she had done, knew that Commander Cross had been relieved because of her. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked through the gate. The training yard was full of candidates, most of them men, all of them moving through drills with the mechanical precision of people who had done this 1,000 times. Maya scanned the group, looking for a familiar face, someone who might acknowledge her without hostility. Instead, she found silence, the kind that's louder than shouting. Heads turned, conversations stopped. A few people nodded, acknowledgments that were neither warm nor cold, most just stared. Maya ignored them. She walked to the equipment shed, grabbed her gear, and started setting up for the day's training. She was early, deliberately so. She wanted to be ready before anyone could question whether she belonged. "Raise." She turned. Standing behind her was a tall woman in her 30s, with close-cropped hair and the build of someone who could probably bench press a small car. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, one of the senior instructors. Her expression was unreadable. "Lieutenant, heard you were coming back." "Yes, ma'am." Chen studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. We need people who actually give a damn." She paused. Cross was a nightmare. Half the candidates here are terrified of making a mistake because she would crucify them for it. Maybe now we can actually focus on training instead of playing mind games. Maya felt a flicker of relief. "I'm ready to work, ma'am." "I know you are, that's why you're here." Chen gestured toward the training yard. "You're starting with advanced tactical scenarios today. Think you can handle it?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Don't make me regret backing your reinstatement." The day was brutal. Every drill was designed to push candidates to their limits, to test not just their physical capabilities but their decision-making under pressure. Maya worked with a Belgian Malinois named Ajax, a high-energy dog who had washed out of 2 previous handler pairings because he was too intense, too driven. Most handlers couldn't keep up with him. Maya could. She moved through the scenarios with a focus that bordered on obsessive. Bomb detection drills, hostage situations, ambush scenarios where split-second decisions meant life or death. Ajax responded to her commands with precision, his body language syncing with hers in a way that felt natural, instinctive. By the end of the day, Maya was exhausted. Her uniform was soaked with sweat, her muscles screaming, her mind foggy with fatigue. But she had performed flawlessly. Every scenario, every drill, executed without error. Chen approached her as she was loading Ajax back into his kennel. "Not bad, Rays." "Thank you, ma'am. You've got potential, but potential doesn't mean much if you can't sustain it. This program isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. Can you go the distance?" Maya looked Chen in the eye. "I've already proven I can, ma'am. I wouldn't be here if I couldn't." Chen smiled, a small, approving expression. "Fair enough. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be harder." The weeks that followed were a blur of training, testing, and relentless evaluation. Maya threw herself into the program with a fervor that bordered on reckless. She was up before dawn, running drills before the official training day started. She stayed late, working with Ajax on obedience and bonding exercises. She studied every manual, memorized every protocol, practiced every scenario until her body moved on autopilot. She wasn't just trying to pass. She was trying to prove a point, to cross to the people who had doubted her to herself. But the program wasn't just about individual performance. It was about teamwork, about building trust with a partner who couldn't speak but who understood you better than most humans ever would. And as Maya worked with Ajax, she started to understand what Mercer had meant when he talked about Titan. The bond between handler and dog wasn't just professional. It was something deeper, primal, a connection forged in trust and mutual respect. Ajax was a challenge. He was smart, almost too smart, constantly testing boundaries, pushing back against commands to see if Maya would hold firm. But she did, every time. And slowly, over days and weeks, Ajax started to respond not just to her commands but to her presence. He would look to her for guidance, for reassurance, for direction. One afternoon, during a live explosive detection exercise, Ajax alerted to a training device hidden in a pile of rubble. He sat perfectly still, his nose pointing directly at the location, his body language screaming, "Here. Right here." Maya called it in, marked the spot, and cleared the area. The instructors verified the find. Perfect execution. Chen walked over, nodding approvingly. "That's what I'm talking about. You're not just going through the motions. You're reading him, trusting him. That's what makes a good handler." Maya felt a surge of pride. Not arrogance, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing she was finally getting it right. That evening, back at her apartment, her phone buzzed. A message from Mercer. "How's training going?" She smiled, typing back. "Brutal but good. Ajax is coming around." "Good. Titan asks about you." "Dogs can't ask questions." "This one can. Dinner this weekend." She hesitated, then typed, "Yeah, I'd like that." The weekend came and Maya found herself back at Mercer's bungalow. Titan greeted her at the door, his tail wagging furiously, his entire body vibrating with excitement. She knelt down, wrapping her arms around him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "Missed you too, buddy," she murmured. Mercer was in the kitchen again, this time making something that smelled like garlic and herbs. "You look better," he said without turning around. "Feel better. Training's intense, but I'm handling it." "I know you are." They ate together, the conversation flowing easily. Maya talked about Ajax, about the challenges of working with a dog who had his own opinions about everything. Mercer shared stories from his deployments, the kind of stories that were equal parts humor and heartbreak. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. There was something about Mercer's presence that was grounding, steady. He didn't judge, didn't push, he just listened. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said as they cleaned up after dinner. "Always." "Why did you stay in after Titan retired? Most guys get out, start families, find something normal." Mercer was quiet for a moment, drying a plate with methodical precision. "I thought about it, but the truth is I don't know how to be normal. I don't know how to wake up in the morning and not have a mission. The teams, the deployments, the constant state of readiness. That's who I am. It's not always healthy, but it's real." Maya nodded. She understood that. The need for purpose, for something bigger than yourself. "What about you?" Mercer asked. "What happens after you graduate?" "I get assigned to a team, probably deployed within 6 months." She paused. "I want to be overseas. I want to do the work that actually matters." "It's not glamorous." "I know, but it's necessary." Mercer looked at her, his expression serious. "You're going to be good at this, Maya. Better than good, just don't lose yourself in it. Don't let the mission become the only thing that matters." Says the man who lives for the mission. "Exactly, which is why I know what I'm talking about." They stood there in the small kitchen, the weight of his words settling between them. Maya felt something shift, a quiet understanding that this friendship, this connection, was becoming something she relied on, something she needed. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Mercer smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "You've already thanked me. Now go out there and show them what you're made of." And she did. Over the following months, Maya became one of the top candidates in the program. She and Ajax worked together like they had been paired for years, their movements synchronized, their communication wordless. The other candidates started to look to her for guidance, for advice, for the kind of leadership that came not from authority but from competence. When graduation day finally arrived, Maya stood at attention in her dress uniform, her chest tight with emotion. Lieutenant Chen called her name, handed her the certificate that proved she had made it, that she belonged. As the ceremony ended, Maya searched the crowd, and there, standing near the back, was Mercer. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a plain shirt, but when their eyes met, he nodded once, a gesture of pride and respect. She had made it, against the odds, against the doubts, against everything that had tried to break her. She had earned her place. What does it mean to truly arrive? Not just to survive, but to thrive. To look back at the person you were and barely recognize her. 2 years later, Maya stood on the tarmac of a forward operating base in eastern Syria, the desert sun beating down like a hammer, turning the air into something you could taste. Dust and jet fuel and the faint metallic tang of fear. She was dressed in full tactical gear, her rifle slung across her chest, Ajax at her side. The dog was calm, focused, his eyes scanning the perimeter with the same trained vigilance that Maya had taught him. Her team was preparing for a high-value target extraction. Intelligence suggested there was an IED network in the compound they were about to hit, which meant Ajax was critical to the mission's success. One missed device could mean casualties, could mean failure. The team leader, a grizzled gunnery sergeant named Tors, approached her. "Raise," You and Ajax are on point. We breach, you clear. Simple. Roger that, Gunny. Simple in theory. In practice, nothing about combat was ever simple. They moved out under cover of darkness, the team flowing through the terrain like shadows. Maya's senses were on high alert, every sound amplified, every movement catalogued. Ajax moved beside her, his nose working, his body language telling her everything she needed to know. Clear, clear, clear. Then he stopped, sat, the universal signal for detection. Maya raised her fist, halting the team. Ajax has something. Tors moved up beside her. Where? 20 feet, 11 o'clock, buried device. The team adjusted, marking the location, rerouting around it. The mission continued, smooth and controlled, because Maya and Ajax had done their job. By the time they extracted the target and returned to base, the sun was rising, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Maya was exhausted, her body running on adrenaline and muscle memory, but they had succeeded. No casualties, clean operation. Tors clapped her on the shoulder as they dismounted from the vehicles. Hell of a job, Rays. Your dog saved lives today. He always does, Gunny. Back in her quarters, Maya stripped off her gear, her body aching in ways that had become familiar. She fed Ajax, made sure he had water, then collapsed onto her cot. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mercer. Heard you had a successful op. Proud of you. She smiled, typing back. Learned from the best. Titan says hello. He misses his favorite person. Tell him I miss him too. I'll be stateside in 3 months. Beers on me. Deal. Maya set her phone down, staring at the ceiling of her quarters. She thought about the girl she had been 2 years ago. Desperate, broken, convinced she had thrown her life away for a dog she didn't even know. And now she was here, deployed, part of a team that trusted her, living the life she had always wanted. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, nights where she questioned whether she was strong enough, smart enough, brave enough. But she had pushed through. And somewhere along the way, she had stopped trying to prove herself to others and started proving it to herself. Ajax shifted beside her cot, his head resting on his paws, his eyes watching her. She reached down, scratching behind his ears. We did good today, buddy. His tail thumped once against the floor. Agreement. Maya closed her eyes, letting the exhaustion pull her under. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another challenge, another chance to do what she had been trained for. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of peace. A moment to acknowledge that she had made it, that she had earned her place in a world that had tried to tell her she didn't belong. And when her deployment ended, when she finally returned to Norfolk, she was greeted not just by her team, but by Mercer and Titan, waiting at the airfield. Titan barked once, a joyous sound that cut through the noise of engines and voices. Maya dropped her bag, ran to him, wrapping her arms around the dog who had started it all. Mercer stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Welcome home, Maya. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and smiled. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The years that followed were a blur of deployments, training evolutions, and the slow, steady building of a career that had once seemed impossible. Maya became one of the most respected handlers in the program, sought after for high-risk missions, known for her ability to read dogs and situations with equal precision. Ajax retired after 6 years of service, his body worn from the demands of combat. Maya adopted him, brought him home to a small house she had bought near the base. He spent his days sleeping in the sun, chasing squirrels in the backyard, living the peaceful life he had earned. When Maya was promoted to Chief Petty Officer, Lieutenant Chen was there to pin on her new rank. You've come a long way, Rays. Couldn't have done it without people who believed in me, ma'am. You did the hard part, we just didn't get in your way. The ceremony was small, attended by her team, a few instructors, and Mercer. He stood in the back as he always did, watching with quiet pride. After the formalities ended, he approached her, extending his hand. "Congratulations, Chief." She shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. "Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me. You did this." "I did it because someone gave me a second chance." Mercer smiled. "And you made damn sure you didn't waste it." That evening, Maya sat on her porch, Ajax asleep at her feet, watching the sun set over Norfolk. The sky was painted in shades of pink and purple, the kind of beauty that felt almost too perfect to be real. She thought about the girl she had been, standing in the rain, making a choice that would define the rest of her life. She had been terrified then, convinced she was throwing everything away, but she had been wrong. She hadn't thrown anything away. She had found something: purpose, belonging, a life that mattered. Her phone buzzed, a message from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Patel. I don't know if you remember me, but I wanted to let you know that the clinic is nomming our training program after you. The RAISE protocol, for teaching handlers to prioritize life over bureaucracy. Thought you should know." Maya stared at the message, her throat tight. She had never asked for recognition, had never expected it, but knowing that her choice, her sacrifice, had created something lasting, that meant everything. She typed back, "I remember you. Thank you for everything you did that day. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like." Maya set her phone down, looking out at the horizon. The world was vast, full of challenges and heartbreak and moments of grace, but she was ready for it, because she had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and in that action it changes everything.